is actually to thank Mihaela for a nice introduction. But I've got to now talk about Luke Carman, and I'm really practiced in doing this. So now I don't wish to overrun what Luke might mention this morning, so my job is really easy. I'll refer to the things he's unlikely to say. So, the basics. Luke graduated with a PhD from Western Sydney University, which has a formidable reputation for producing fine writers and fine literary works. Luke became established as an academic, essayist, and fiction writer, and I can name some highly regarded titles, of course, but today I'd like to bounce off the frequent question in the minds of writers and other creatives. How are we going to create well enough? And even if we do, how will we get an audience? A writer who is accomplished and has such accomplishments acknowledged can potentially assist other writers achieve a better understanding of what they are doing, what is working, what might need some attention. But creative people usually also need to be seen and heard during their development, to try themselves and their works out, and for that they need opportunity and encouragement. An example of what counts is how Luke has supported every anthology created by Mihaela Cristescu, which has published Romanian and English works together, to be then shared in both Romania and Australia. This is data of one writer supporting another writer's great idea, which in turn involves many other writers in consistent kindness, reassurance in action, an approach and practice you can measure more than words. New Writers Group Incorporated greatly benefits from Luke's work with aspiring and talented writers, and so do the writers in these anthologies that are central to what we are celebrating. This morning I thank Luke for the intellectual breadth so evident in his own written works, and for the generous spirit so evident in his character, Dr. Luke Carman.
Hello everyone, how are you going? First of all, thanks. As always, just ludicrous and generous. I don't know what I do to deserve that kind of introduction, but I'm glad you're happy. I just want to preface this talk with 2 points. The first one is what an honour it is to be on the stage after Adrian Saleh's extraordinary performance of recitation of the translation by Cristescu's extraordinary poem. I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit of a Hyperion to a Seder situation here, but nonetheless, it's all right. The other point is that I just want to say I have got a sense of humour. Sometimes when I'm writing a speech or something, I just forget about it. And so this is a very solemn kind of speech. So I'll just get it started now. Addressing an audience in Berkeley some 10 years ago, Terry Eagleton, who is possibly the world's preeminent living English language literary critic, perhaps intending to inject an air of levity into his lecture, he described his long-standing dread that on a day not too far distant, an international bureaucrat somewhere would make the shocking discovery that there are university departments full of lecturers and professors who are paid very well I should say, to carefully study people, places and events that do not, and in many cases could not, exist. This dread, Eagleton claimed, was a paranoid conceit of the literary critic, who by occupation spends the better part of their mental energies attending seriously to fictions, texts, and other pseudo-existent entities. For many years now, I can't claim to have been involved for the whole 10. One of the key events and ritual occasions on my calendar has been giving address on the English language contributions to the Romanian Australian anthologies of contemporary prose and poetry. Now, this annual task has been a great pleasure and privilege for me, and it's one that's permitted me to act as a kind of dubious literary critical resource. From 2017's Pounding the Pavement to Street Musicians, earlier this year, I've read and reviewed, at least by my count, 215 unique works of poetry and prose. Through Mihaela Cristescu's indefatigable efforts, Sue Crawfort, Carol Amos, and Limonita Cristescu by her side, in editorial and illustrative support, 215 unique pieces of poetry and prose have been added to the catalogue of our literary culture in perpetuity, and this number only accounts for roughly half the sum total of those anthologies when you consider the Romanian quota. And every one of those 215 English language contributions has been, it may sound twee to say this, but has been a joy to read and write about. 15,238 words and counting. Today, however, I'm asked to give an impression of something decidedly non-fictional. Something outside the text, as we say in the literary critic community. 10 years of publications, 10 years of collaboration, relationships and contributions to literature and culture. These are very real phenomena, as are their effects on the wider world. The world of the real, with all its implacable actuality and complexity, is not, and it never has been, my forte. So faced with the daunting task of commenting on something outside my field, I must admit a certain temptation to indulge in dramatising my personal experience of the Romanian anthology, rather than, say, providing a rigorous, objective analysis. And as you may have noticed from my presentation so far, this is a temptation that I intend to give in to completely. Every year that I've spoken about these anthologies now, I've done so as someone for whom half of each publication is unknowable. There have been occasions where I've submitted portions of the Romanian contributions to Google Translate out of sheer curiosity, but the results, as you can imagine, often generate more mystery than illumination. Likewise, I cannot possibly know the consequences these publications have caused for those writers who have contributed to them in either language, even amongst the local contingencies, or to speak to what these contributions and publications have meant to individual authors, or to particular readers, or to the friends, families, and loved ones who have circulated around these texts or come into their unfathomable orbits, and yet something demands to be said about these effects and consequences. Perhaps then, what I should do is simply point out what most distinguishes the Romanian Australian anthologies in a national publishing sense. So most fundamental, even more than the structural and linguistic uniqueness of the composition of these anthologies, is the remarkable status of unfettered artistic collaboration that is unanimous. The editors of these anthologies, they cannot be accused of politic manoeuvring or careerism. Legion of contributors are not seeking remuneration or acclaim, and the anthology itself is only ever discussed in terms of its content and character rather than its sales or reviews or some other market abstraction. In the same Berkeley lecture which I began this talk by referencing, Terry Eagleton confided his fear of international bureaucrats, but he also provided a definition of art. He defined it as autotelic. It's a rare designation that applies to anything that exists purely for its own self-delight. The category of the autotelic is an ontological class containing only two known objects: art on the one hand and God on the other. Art in this conception is analogous to the sacred. It approximates divinity, and what we celebrate when we come to acknowledge the Romanian Australian anthology each year at the State Library is something far greater than the amount of its unmeasurable effects. It's greater than the arithmetic of its contents. It's greater than the actuarial of the literary qualities that anyone might make on its behalf. For example, that it celebrates genuine diversity, that it is a performance of cross-cultural hybridity, that it's an ongoing innovation of formal miscellany desperately needed in a very conservative publishing culture, that it consistently represents a genuinely original contribution to the body of literature in two bi-hemispheric countries simultaneously. All this we could say in praising the fruits of this 10-year collaboration, and yet, if that was the only thing that was said about them, it would fall far short of the spirit of this occasion. The Romanian-Australian anthology, as far as I can deduce, exists outside the ordinary confines of the Australian publishing apparatus, and more than any other publication known to me, it is animated by the same spirit of self-delight that distinguishes art as an ideal, pure autotelic artifact, persisting and renewed every year. Mihaela, the great Romanian writer and historian, makes the case that all rituals are an attempt to imbue the profane present moment with the eternal meaning of the sacred ideal. Nothing can endure, Iliad writes, if it is not animated, if it is not through ritual endowed with a soul. And when we meet, as we are today, to celebrate these anthologies, we are enacting a kind of faith in the proximity between the creative act and something intrinsic to the greater part of being human. In coming together to celebrate the Romanian and Australian anthology as we do today, we are expressing the most profound faith in being itself, or, to quote one last time from Eagleton, the ecstatic overflowing abundance of life, accessible in only two places, in art and in the divine. And for that, as they say in thesis, and as I invite you to join me in doing now, let us give thanks.
Once again, thank you very much for all these years. Thank you. We have here, as usual, this one. And we have the poster of the event, of course. And we would like you to open this in front of everyone on the stage.
All right, it was a bit intimate, but for a big public. Oh my God! Oh,
It's arrived.
Just for anyone who doesn't know what this is a publication of my essays, unique publication of my essays, translated by Mihaela Cristescu, to be published in Romania next month, to be launched in Romania next month. And I can't thank Mihaela enough. It's an extraordinary honor that she persisted with the extraordinary work of translating my incredibly dense and overwrought writing into such a beautiful language. I only wish I could read it myself. But since I know I know the English version pretty well, and I just want to thank Mihaela. It's an absolute honor, and I'm absolutely floored. And what's more, the people of Romania are inviting me over to the launch next month, which will be my first time in that country, and I just can't tell you how generous and bewildering Mihaela and the Romanian literary community have been in facilitating all that and making it happen, and it's just an absolute treasure to, again,